Hello everyone, and welcome to the final update for Let's Play the Journeyman Project 3, Legacy of Time. We've done our last run through all of the time zones, and pretty much picked up everything that we really needed to, in terms of hints, comments, and looking at everything from a different perspective. So what's left to really do? Well, there's actually a couple messages that are universal to the areas that we haven't actually checked out yet. Pretty much looking at changing your disguise or time jumping in front of someone. There's at least two, I think, that we haven't actually looked at, and one of them is right here. You see that we are actually not able to go this way.
Sorry, Gage, there's a person ahead. You need a chameleon guise before we can go there.
Yeah, he's saying there's a person ahead, which is rather odd because, well... Sure, there is a person ahead, but if you remember, I've actually been up here before. This is just one of those weird areas where I really don't understand it. And yeah, say hello to the Dob again. The thing is that, well, when we're on this area of this platform over here, we're not able to time jump or change our disguise.
You can't perform a time jump in front of someone.
Because technically I'm not in front of someone, because if I go over here, there's absolutely no problem. I can do more disguise jumping all the time. It's rather odd, which makes this place rather odd in itself. Maybe there's something more to it, I don't know. Or maybe this is just something extra in itself. I was reading a different walkthrough for this game, and it actually mentioned this specific area. And it mentioned that in this specific area that, well, moving around the cursor, it flickers a lot compared to the rest of the game. It was an old walkthrough when this was not an issue where all the flickering was. But seeing as I'm running a newer computer, well, that issue just kind of resurfaced. Legacy of Time is not the first game to use this kind of engine in order to look around in 360. There was a game released a year earlier called Atlantis, Lost Tales, which also, it may have actually been the first one to actually use this, but it kind of nodded to that, which I'm not necessarily thinking that it's supposed to be an Easter egg for this game to remind you of that earlier game. But something interesting, just to really say. Because even when I'm shifting this way, I'm able to go this way. Like, hi! Look at me! Hey, I wasn't supposed to go up here, and now I'm able to? Like, make up your mind. Make up your mind, game. What am I supposed to be doing in this area? So yeah, that's something weird. Here's another weird thing you can do. Apparently, when you're zoomed into an area and you have the ability to time jump, it doesn't warp you out like it naturally would. It actually just fades to black. There's not a lot of places that you're actually able to zoom in on an object and then time jump in the same place. Like, for instance, in there, you can zoom in on the imprint on the pottery there. But because the olive oil vendor's there, you're not able to time jump. So that's kind of a weird time jumping situation there. Now, before we go any further in terms of weirdness, there is one last thing in terms of the finale that we hadn't actually looked at. And that was one additional hint. If you looked closely enough in the finale video, you might have noticed that there was a flickering light bulb down below. To be honest, I completely don't know why it's actually flickering and won't stay in one place, because what I'm doing here is exactly why that light bulb is showing up. It's just, I don't know, is it shy? I don't understand it myself. But it's supposed to say this.
Gage, you just turned the correct face away. You should turn that face back and concentrate on the other artifacts.
So yeah, that's rather odd, but in terms of hints and comments and things, those are the last ones in terms of what the game files are able to offer. Everything else in terms of Arthur and the hints and comments are actually going to come from a different source, and that is the official Journeyman Project website. You see, in the Legacy of Time part of that website, there is a secret level 2 webpage that you're able to look at, which contains a bunch of propaganda, cool posters, a nice little behind the scenes of how they actually constructed the real life chameleon jumpsuit, which is really cool, and also outtakes. Outtakes including Arthur comments and hints that did not make it into the game at all. So they're not even in the game files, they're only available with the website. There's a total of 16 there. And actually, that outtakes list was actually updated a long time ago, well before later versions of Legacy of Time came out. So that means that a lot of the outtakes actually made it into the game, and we've heard them before. So how many of the outtakes still didn't make it in? A total of 5. There's 5 outtakes that still didn't make it even into the recent versions of the game, like the Good Old Games version, which I'm playing right now. For instance, Arthur's supposed to have a comment in terms of this area, commenting about the ability to have like a cool panoramic view of destruction.
Nothing like a panoramic view of complete destruction to lift the spirits, huh, Gage?
Now, this next outtake, I'm not sure where it is, because the outtake doesn't really give a lot of context to. And I have to mention now that the outtake quality of the audio for Arthur is much less because it wasn't incorporated into the game, unfortunately.
Very intriguing, yes? No? Yes? No, yes? No? No, yes? Yes, no?
The next outtake has a reason why it's still an outtake, because I think it has to do with actually moving the windmill around and moving this lever.
Go on. Pull my lever, punk.
The next outtake actually has to do with the oven. It's a variant of a message or a comment that we actually heard beforehand, but is a little bit more, well, inappropriate.
That oven looks interesting. Go poke your head inside and see if anything catches fire.
Yeah, I can see why this one didn't make it through, and still hasn't. And the last outtake is actually in El Dorado. Flying up into this particular balloon, when Arthur mentions that we were daydreaming, he takes a different stance in terms of the outtake here.
Gage, you seem out of it for a while. Don't breathe those balloon fumes too deeply. Heaven only knows how the natives bottled that gas.
Now, this next part that I want to cover is just honestly something I couldn't leave well enough alone. You see, if you're following the playlist, I actually put up a bonus video a while ago going over this weird noise that I heard during one of Kashani's lines, specifically at the temple, when he said, "That'll be Tendramoy." There was something beforehand that I couldn't actually decipher, but it sounded like someone backstage cueing him to go. So what I did was actually take away the music in the background, and this is what it sounds like.
That'll be 10 Dramoy. No. I told you, I'm out of the charity business. Well then, I guess you'll just have to wait for another one. Pay back what you owe me. Look, the wine and song at the festival must have loosed your pockets as well as your tongues. Look, keep your money, try your luck with someone else, huh?
There's actually a bunch of weird noises with specifically Kashani in this specific area when you take away the music in the background. It's amazing what you can hide. One other thing that was pointed out by one of the viewers who caught their eye during the finale was during the cutscene when Gisela transmits to you from her ship, you actually see on the side a message about an emergency broadcast system for the Orylens. It's a rather interesting piece of text, but apparently what they actually do is spell safety wrong. Safety. Very, very strange on terms of that idea. In addition to the outtakes for the comments and hints from Arthur, there's actually a bunch of bloopers that happened during the shooting of all of the FMV scenes. So enjoy those!
Why did I agree to that?
Why? Because you saved the world again! All by yourself, with absolutely no help from your friends.
All right, point taken. I won't forget to mention you.
Holograms don't cough.
Death will most certainly be the punishment for this crime. There is a display at the top of the helmet that shows the date and current time zone. Activate that and choose a vacation somewhere out by a lake. Perfect. Now.
Okay. Update.
Life is a sport. Give it up.
Great.
It's the power to turn one element into another, lead into gold. I need it to arm my horde against, no, I just need it to arm my horde.
During my search into the game files for anything that I might have missed, I actually came across the animations for when you inspect each of the individual objects and they spin around. And I came across a couple of items that actually don't have their own description, but actually have their spinning animation programmed, but not actually placed into the game. One, obviously, is the legacy piece, which does get an actual slot in your inventory, but you're not able to actually inspect it. But the other one is actually the translator biochip, which you lose very quickly at the beginning of the game. Interesting to see. Now, upon looking into that inspect file in the game files that showed all of the spinning animations for object analysis, I actually came across another item that I completely missed over. It's a weird little item that doesn't really have a lot of use to it, but it just shows how hasty a person can be when playing this game. It has to do with making your gold medallion, and missing a step. Now, the order of making the gold medallion is, of course, you have the raw clay, you press it into the symbol at the olive oil vendor's shop, then you come back to the oven, place the clay and the gold leaf into the kiln, spin the kiln, and you have your medallion. But what happens if you put the clay into the kiln with the gold leaf without the imprint? You're able to do it. And here we go. Okay, apparently we did it. And this is kind of what we're really needing extra gold leaf for whenever you can get it, because sometimes this happens. Brand new incomplete item. And this item is simply known as the gold-covered clay. Not a lot different compared to the medallion other than not having the symbol into it. So what happens when we go over to the temple?
Your medallion, citizen?
He'll ask you about the medallion, but you actually don't get an option to give him it straight away. But you can still use the same principle of just opening your inventory and personally giving it to him.
Do you expect to gain entry with that?
No, not really. And that's pretty much all you get with the guard. It also is the same way as if you were a second-class citizen. But yeah, interesting enough. Now, we just covered a lot of things in a really short amount of time, so I think it's good to have a break before we continue on. What's good break material, though? I wonder. Alright, I think that's a decent break. But now it's time for the moment some of you have been waiting for. It's time for the Easter egg hunt. According to the Journeyman Project website, there are a total of 17 Easter eggs in the game. I don't think all of the Easter eggs have been found. Majority of them have been documented, and I'm going to be looking over those. But I think a lot of them actually have been found if you look at it in different ways. So we're just going to go through the ones that I have, and I'll make my own judgments, and you can all make your own judgments as well. Immediately when you start the game, you actually come across your first Easter egg really early on. It's with Arthur in Agent 3's jumpsuit. But how do you see this Easter egg? Well, in terms of depending on whether you have a Windows or a Mac, Windows, you actually press the E key on your keyboard in order to see Easter eggs. If you're using a Mac, I believe you're using the tilde key. So, if you hold down E and then click on Agent 3's suit, you'll get your first Easter egg. And there you have it in turbo speed, so there you go. And that's the first Easter egg. The second Easter egg is in Ruined El Dorado. E key same as before, but it actually is a different thing instead. Hold the E key and press on the rope and bring the other balloon closer to you and jump onto it. And of course, it's always better to do this in turbo speed. You don't need to see the entire thing.
You've got quite a way with the rope. Now tie me up because I've been naughty.
Instead of the wrangling a bull in under 6 seconds, Arthur gets really sexy with you. Now, this is a comment you can actually find in the game files, so that is a little bit of a clue for how to figure out how to make that trigger. It's with the E key, and it's an Easter egg. To my knowledge, there's no actual Easter eggs in Ruined Shangri-La. But the next Easter egg that we're going to be covering, and the remainder, are actually going to be in the main time zones. First up is El Dorado. These kinds of Easter eggs are rather difficult in order to actually find because they involve holding down the E key all the time because they're static images. Static images you can't actually look at in the game files compared to animations, dialogue, and comments and hints, and also ambient music. So you just gotta hopefully be lucky and look every single degree every single time you stop somewhere. And eventually you'll find this one. If you hold the E key and head on over here, the guy on the balloon will turn into a cat. Well worth it. Next up is all the way at the end of El Dorado, right before you actually pick up the legacy piece. In fact, actually, this Easter egg only triggers after you pick up the legacy piece and return to El Dorado. Now, actually there's no reason to return to El Dorado. So this one is easily missable, unless you go into the game files and realize that there's something really weird happening with this specific thing. Now, not only are static files static images hard to find in terms of Easter eggs, but also Easter eggs that don't follow the secret key rule. Hitting the E key does nothing here. You actually need to use a specific item on this thing in order to make the Easter egg activate. If you've seen the file in the game files, then you know what you actually need to use, but, well, judging from the look of this thing, what do you think you could possibly use on this pedestal? Maybe a little bit of money. The other thing about this is that it has a very small window of usage for this thing. And you get this Easter egg. Whac-A-Mole, anybody? This next Easter egg involves 2 time zones, and involves a lot of things that you have to do beforehand before it will actually unlock. First off, you actually have to go into El Dorado and look down into this thing properly, and look inside, and you'll see the temple down below. But you also need to go into Shangri-La and do 2 things. One is go into the steam tunnels regularly. The second, though, is that you actually have to go underneath Khan's tent, go up Khan's tent, and like the way you would take his sword, but you have to be punched down by him at least once. When you do that, this is what happens. You travel through the center of the Earth, and also 700 years into the future? Maybe it takes that long to go through the center of the Earth, I have no idea. But yeah, that's the Easter egg. Rather interesting and a little bit more complicated in order to actually get. Now we get into Shangri-La. This next Easter egg is rather fun. Remember when we were getting beat up by Genghis Khan? Well, let's get beat up some more. How about that? That sounds logical.
You task me. You task me again and I will not have it!
He straight up headbutts you, and ducks fly. And that is the Easter egg for you. Now, that would be the end of the Easter egg, but there's actually a little bit more to it. Arguably, this is completely separate, because you're able to do this with 2 different people. So arguably this is 2 Easter eggs, but I don't really believe that myself. But you can get pummeled by Genghis Khan, by the Pilgrim as well.
You mock my wish for solitude. You, a foolish worm, defy Genghis Khan. Oh, Manik. Oh, Manik. Oh, to the cold hells with you.
So yeah, ducks. This Easter egg also doesn't follow the E key rule. You just need to talk to Genghis Khan a 3rd time with either the Pilgrim or the Dub-Dub, and you'll get pummeled and ducks will fly. Next up we have a really interesting Easter egg to cover. This one is another static image one. It involves holding the E key and heading over to the Pilgrim. Nothing specifically happens with the Pilgrim, but if you turn around and look on the Chorten over here, you'll see a can of Mountain Dew. The weird thing about this can of Mountain Dew, though, is that it has apparently more things going on to it than meets the eye. For instance, it has a hand. If you click on it, nothing happens. But according to the Journeyman Project website, apparently this Mountain Dew can has not one, but 2 secrets connected to it. 2 Easter eggs. And one of them, I really don't know why, but apparently it's an exclusive Easter egg. Only to the Mac DVD Anniversary Edition, which you can also purchase on their website if you want. Apparently, that Easter egg involves an Elvis impersonator. Apparently, maybe Arthur. Arthur gives you an extra comment, but I wouldn't know because there's no comments like that or anything related to Elvis impersonations in the game files that I can find. So it could be exclusive to the Mac version? I don't know, though. Which is weird. But that doesn't explain the hand, though. The thing is, the hand is supposed to do something when you click on the Mountain Dew can. How do I know this? Well, when you switch to a different disguise, you have that noise playing, right? Well, if you have that noise playing and in the middle, you hit the can, it cuts off the music, which means that something did happen, or something used to happen. So what actually did happen back in the day? Apparently what is supposed to happen when you click the Mountain Dew can is that your web browser is supposed to open. And according to my very unreliable source for this, it leads to this page, the Mountain of Dew www page, which has a lot of weird things to it. I don't know. Yeah, apparently they really like Mountain Dew. I guess this is what they drank during production, but I cannot be absolutely certain about it. It's also an older website, actually, which at least says something good about the Easter egg. But yeah, this is pretty much it. Going back to the Mountain Dew page, it doesn't have anything anymore, so that's kind of fantastic for that. But yeah, it's kind of interesting if it's actually true, but I'm not entirely sure. Shangri-La certainly has a lot of Easter eggs. Especially in the steam tunnels, where apparently one developer decided to just litter the place with Easter eggs. At least 3 of them. First up is in the red coral room. And it's red coral because that symbol is related to the symbols of the Chakravartin, which I discussed last video. Now, how do you get an Easter egg to occur in the steam tunnels? Well, through the E key, of course, but the only way you're actually able to use the E key at all in these tunnels is if you switch the wheels over. So let's do so. Hold down the E key and go. So, what did that do? Well, it didn't do over here, or what is this? Oh god, that's terrifying. Oh my god. Really cool looking, though. He just kind of put graphics into the steam tunnel walls. So the red coral room has this guy roaming around. He looks like he should live down here. But what else is looming? In the elephant tusks room, pull the same lever the same way. And for some reason it's always to the right. You get this message. Deny everything. According to the website, one of the developers really liked the X-Files, and it kind of shows. There we go. Deny everything. So that's 2 Easter eggs down here. One last Easter egg to show. That Easter egg is actually in the, depending on what you want to call it, the dumpling room, the triple-I gem room, or the 3 jewels room. And there's the gold truffle around it, the lines radiating out. And you do the same thing. E key, lever, go. This one I'm rather unsure of. It looks nice though, just radiates. It's very shiny. What it is, I'm not entirely sure though. Someone will have to enlighten me. And that is the 3 steam tunnel Easter eggs. So what is left, you may be wondering? Well, the interesting thing about the next Easter egg is it's probably the most infamous in Journeyman Project history. It makes a little bit more sense when you have apparently the Mac exclusive, or whatever the Mac DVD Easter egg has with the Elvis impersonator. But the Journeyman Project website does help you along with this Easter egg, giving you the question of what would like to eat this? Or what would like this particular thing? And you really have to think to yourself, what are you able to answer that question with? Because once you know the answer, it kind of makes sense. But here's the interesting thing about it. Eventually, your mind kind of goes towards, well, this. It's a combination you're able to actually enter something into the game compared to any other place in the game. And you have a bunch of different things. You have a skull, you have Woody, you have the Gear face, you have Bull Brown, you have that, and you have the bird. It's very easy to see that it's a bird. And you gotta think like birds like stuff. But what would they like is still the question. You don't really know what you're going to be getting if you answer with bird. So how do you answer? Well, you just press in the heads. Remember that to open the Earth door, you had to use the 4 different headlock combination. That doesn't mean that's the only combination you're able to enter. I've tried a bunch of combinations with this to see if I was able to get any other results, and according to this, well, the only other combination is the one I'm doing now, for this specific Easter egg. The only way to uniformly answer something like this is to make sure that you're pressing all of the same heads, to make sure that you're only answering with one thing. So what happens when we put in 4 birds? Something happened. Otherwise we wouldn't have gotten that. Now the interesting thing about this Easter egg is that it's actually time sensitive. If you were to open the door into the fire chamber down below, before doing this combination, you would be locked out of this Easter egg. You wouldn't be able to do it. So you have to do this Easter egg combination before continuing on with El Dorado. Now the problem is that, sure, we put in a combination and it worked, but where do we go from here? What changed in El Dorado? Well, think of it this way. What places in El Dorado are you able to go into that really don't have any sort of meaning behind it? And you kind of think to yourself, well, the house over, or at least the stable over here, has that kind of idea. The only thing really in here was Arthur's automatic message. But if you go to the very last stall over here, you will get your prize. What is it? It's Cornbread. Cornbread has apparently just kind of gained a very small cult following in terms of Journeyman Project fans. Sosikwi have a soft spot for cornbread, apparently. In their language, the dish is called karak, and is generously prepared with yak butter. Keep in mind this description, because it actually is part of a chain. And apparently the Elvis impersonator Easter egg apparently points you in the same direction that the description does. So where in this game do we find yak butter? Butter, 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 gotta churn, butter, 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 gotta churn. Do 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 do. There's yak butter in the Hell's Realm. And there is, especially melted yak's butter in the butter boiler here. The interesting thing about this Easter egg is that it doesn't work if you've taken the butter boiler. You can't combine things in your inventory, so if you leave the butter boiler where it is, the Easter egg is still intact. So if we open it up and go into our cornbread, take it out, and it's able to work with the butter boiler when it isn't an item in our inventory. So the butter boiler still has its use, but it's just a little bit more obtuse. But what does it do exactly? A lot of you may be thinking to yourself, okay, what actually did happen? I'm not gonna lie to you. That is it. I did nothing to the footage at all. That is all you get when you actually put the cornbread in the butter. So, and you can do this as many times as you want. You don't actually lose the cornbread at all. What actually happened? I have no idea. You apparently went to either like Nirvana or something with cornbread and yak butter, and oh my god, you saw the Sosikwi there and your mind was blown. And then you returned here and the screen is all shaky and whatnot. I didn't cut anything out. I swear to God, I would never play coy with something like this. Because everybody else who has seen this is like, okay, what happened there? And then the person's like, what do you mean? And then the conversation ends. That's all that happens. So let's do it again, and there's one final use for the cornbread in the game. At least to my knowledge. But we're gonna take the good way of going into it. The last thing you're able to do with the cornbread is you're actually able to use it as a sequence-breaking object. I mentioned that there's two big things that you're doing in Atlantis, and one is making a golden medallion. You don't have to make a golden medallion if you have the cornbread. Let's show it off.
No second-class citizens in the temple.
But what about a nice tasty bribe? Now, I did mention in the Atlantis video that with specific objects, you're actually able to open up your inventory and then manually give items to people. Specifically the pitcher or the cornbread.
Return to your ferry, I will let you through.
The edicts are very clear. Cornbread is better than God. You may go through. Arthur also probably still says the same comment even though we are through.
He barred you from entering because you were a second-class citizen. Sounds like the city has set up some sort of rigid caste system. Maybe you could imitate the guise of another person a few rungs higher on the social ladder and find a way around the lock guard.
And I did. he doesn't actually connect the dots that I got through, and we're able to go to the temple right now. We also don't lose the cornbread. We never lose the cornbread. It always returns to us. But that is all of the things that we are able to do with the cornbread. In total, I showed you 13 Easter eggs. We have the 10 actual Easter eggs. And then we have the cornbread. You can count the cornbread as just being one thing, but getting the cornbread in itself is already a challenge, and then, well, it could have no uses on its own, but it actually has 2 uses. So the cornbread consists of 3 different Easter eggs on its own because of the combinations that you're able to do with it. So that's 13. However, you can also put in the fact that with getting punched by Genghis Khan, you're able to do it with 2 disguises. So that could technically mean that there is a total of 2 Easter eggs with that. So that brings us up to 14. Then there's the Elvis impersonator Easter egg. Something that I probably am not able to do simply because I don't have the Mac version of this game. So that's 15. And then there is, with the Mountain Dew, clicking on it, opening the web browser, resulting in seeing that web page, which is also another Easter egg. But there's also one more. Where is this last one, you may be asking? Well, it's actually in the temple. It's another Shangri-La Easter egg, of course. So that technically means that there's only one actual Easter egg in Atlantis as well, which is weird. I find that the Easter eggs are so imbalanced, with all of them being technically in Shangri-La. But the last Easter egg is actually with the rusty drum here. Don't you love that noise? It's so great. But if you press E on it, you get a rotate symbol. So what happens if we rotate it now? We get this. Shawnee Ellis's original weak sauce. So weak you'd swear it ain't there. Yeah. It's a bit of an in-joke with the development team, I believe. You can look it up for yourselves. But yeah, there's another Easter egg for you. And I believe with that, that leads us up to 17 Easter eggs. Is it 17 though? Is it technically 17? I don't believe so. There's way too much easy outs with just like extending, saying that one Easter egg is technically 2 because you're able to do it with 2 disguises or whatnot. So I still believe that there is at least 1 or 2 Easter eggs still out there. I want to say at least that. Will I ever know if there's 1 or 2, or is that all of them technically? I will never know. There's still the matter of the Elvis impersonator, because I'm not sure how to get that one. So that is an hunt in itself. But of course, there are still other areas in this game where there are, well, it's questionable whether or not it has its purpose or not. Specifically, this entire right side of the temple, the left side of the gatehouse over there. I'm kind of writing off the empty basket in El Dorado because that's more of a gameplay showcase to say, hey, you can look in baskets in El Dorado, because that's how you get a gold leaf. But there are places in the game where you're able to go to these places completely, and is there any reason to? Not really. But that is our Easter egg hunt. Listen to that. Almost silence, except for the wind. And so with that, we have pretty much covered everything and beyond with the Journeyman Project 3 Legacy of Time. If there is anything else I find in this game, I'll probably upload it and make a small little extra update, but otherwise this is the final update to the LP. Thank you all for watching. I hope you got a lot out of it, but I hope you enjoyed yourselves here. Again, big thanks to Presto Studios. They made a fantastic game, and thanks a lot for an amazing trilogy that will probably never go away from my life. Thank you all for watching. Take care, everyone.
Gage! I miss you.
I made so you can drop it into a square.